On the night my daughter-in-law gave birth, she kicked me out of the room, calling me bad influence. But I kept the story she needed to hear. The hospital corridor felt colder than it should have. I sat on an uncomfortable plastic chair, hands trembling, still hearing Vanessa's words ringing in my ears. "Get her out of here. I don't want her near me or my baby. She's nothing but a bad influence." The labor nurse had given me a sympathetic look as she gently guided me out. My son Jacob's eyes were apologetic, but he stayed by his wife's side. He always did. I'm Amelia Henderson, 65 years old, and I had just been denied the right to witness the birth of my first grandchild. I pressed my handkerchief against my lips to muffle a sob. The fluorescent lights made everything look harsh and unforgiving, much like my relationship with Vanessa over the past 5 years. From the day Jacob brought her home, there was something in her eyes when she looked at me, something cold and mistrustful. At first, I tried everything to welcome her. I cooked her favorite meals after discreetly asking Jacob what she liked. I gave them space, never dropping by unannounced. I even kept quiet when they moved to a neighborhood 40 minutes away, making casual visits nearly impossible. Nothing worked. She'd smile in front of Jacob, then turn cold the moment he left the room. "Your cooking is a bit outdated, don't you think, Amelia?" she'd say, pushing away a plate I'd spent hours preparing. Or, "Jacob and I are thinking of redoing our guest room. We don't really need one since no one stays over." This, after I'd mentioned possibly visiting for a weekend. I tried to tell myself it wasn't personal. Some women just have difficult relationships with their mothers-in-law. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. The way she looked at me sometimes, it was almost like she hated me for simply existing. I sat up straighter as a nurse walked, by hoping for news. Nothing. I checked my watch. 3 hours had passed since they'd forced me out. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Sharon. "Any news yet? How's our grandbaby?" I couldn't bring myself to explain what had happened. Instead, I tucked the phone away and closed my eyes, memories flooding back. The day Jacob told me Vanessa was pregnant should have been one of the happiest of my life. Instead, I'd felt a chill when Vanessa added, "We're going to do things differently. None of that old-fashioned nonsense." The following months were a battle of wills. Every suggestion I made about the baby, dismissed. Every family tradition, I mentioned, rejected. When I offered my mother's antique crib, "We don't want any secondhand items, especially not something that probably doesn't meet modern safety standards." Each rejection pushed the truth deeper inside me. The secret I'd carried for years now felt like a stone in my chest, a truth about Vanessa that even she didn't know. I met Clara Thompson 17 years ago at a community center where I volunteered. She was young, desperate, her eyes hollow with a pain I couldn't fathom. She'd just given up her 3-year-old daughter for adoption, she told me, unable to care for her through her addiction and mental health struggles. "Her name is Vanessa," she'd whispered, showing me a worn photo of a solemn-faced little girl with eyes that seemed too old for her tiny face. "I named her after my grandmother. I hope they kept the name." They did keep the name. I realized it 5 years ago when Jacob brought home a woman with those same solemn eyes, introducing her as Vanessa Chen. The coincidence seemed impossible. But the more I learned about her, adopted at 3, the same unusual middle name, the same birthmark Clara had described, the more certain I became. I never told Jacob. I never told anyone. What good would it do? Vanessa had been raised by loving adoptive parents. Clara had died 2 years after our meeting, finally losing her battle with addiction. The secret was mine alone to carry. Now, as I sat in that sterile hallway, I wondered if that knowledge was part of why Vanessa sensed something different in me, as if on some level she knew I held a piece of her past she couldn't access. The door to the delivery room finally opened. Jacob appeared, his face tired but glowing. "Mom," he whispered, kneeling beside me. "It's a girl. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. They're both doing fine." I clutched his hand. "Can I see them?" His expression clouded. Vanessa's. She's still pretty upset. Maybe tomorrow, okay? I'm sorry, Mom. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He hugged me briefly before returning to his new family, a family that didn't seem to include me. As I gathered my purse to leave, a nurse approached me. Mrs. Henderson, your daughter-in-law is resting now. Would you like to see the baby in the nursery? My heart leapt, but then I remembered Vanessa's words. I'm not sure I should. The nurse's kind eyes met mine. Just through the window. She's the third bassinet from the left. Has your son's chin, I think? I followed her directions and found myself staring at the tiniest, most perfect face I'd ever seen. My granddaughter. As she yawned and stretched her tiny fingers, I pressed my palm against the glass. Hello, little one, I whispered. I have so much to tell you someday, including a story about where you come from, a story your mother desperately needs to hear. The drive home from the hospital was a blur. The radio played softly in the background, but I couldn't focus on the music or the road ahead. All I could see was that tiny face in the nursery window, and Vanessa's expression of pure contempt when she demanded I leave the delivery room. My house felt emptier than usual that night. I'd prepared it for a different homecoming, one where I'd return full of stories about my new grandchild, perhaps with photos to show my neighbor Elaine, who always brought over coffee on Sunday mornings. Instead, I entered silently, setting my purse on the counter and sinking into my living room chair without bothering to turn on the lights. The darkness felt appropriate for my mood. I'd raised Jacob in this house after his father died when Jacob was just 12. We'd weathered those difficult teenage years together, the rebellion, the grief, the slow healing. He'd always been sensitive, perhaps carrying too much responsibility for my happiness. When he met Vanessa in graduate school, I was thrilled to see him so in love, so carefree. She's amazing, Mom, he'd told me over the phone. Smart, driven, beautiful. I've never met anyone like her. The first time he brought her to dinner, I noticed how she surveyed our modest home, her eyes lingering on the outdated kitchen, the family photos cramming every surface. She was polite but distant, answering my questions with minimal detail, redirecting the conversation whenever it veered toward her childhood or family. Vanessa's private about her past, Jacob explained later. Her adoptive parents were good to her, but she still has some unresolved feelings about being given up. If only he knew how unresolved those feelings truly were. I got up and moved to my study, pulling open the bottom drawer of my desk where I kept my most private belongings. Beneath old tax forms and warranties was a manila envelope I hadn't opened in years. Inside was a letter written on pale blue stationery and a photograph of a young woman with haunted eyes holding a toddler with a solemn expression. Clara Thompson had written me this letter a few months before she died, after she learned her cancer was terminal. If you ever meet her, Clara had written in shaky handwriting, please tell Vanessa I never stopped loving her. Tell her I was sick in ways she couldn't understand. Tell her giving her up was the only unselfish thing I ever did. I traced my finger over the words, remembering Clara's desperation, her regret. She'd been barely 30 when she died, her body ravaged by both disease and the years of substance abuse that preceded it. The coincidence still astounded me, that of all the women in the world, my son would fall in love with the daughter of a woman I'd briefly known. When I first recognized Vanessa from the photograph, I'd been tempted to tell her everything immediately. But Jacob had been so clear about her sensitivity regarding her adoption, her resistance to discussing it. Her parents told her that her birth mother was unable to care for her, he'd explained. Vanessa doesn't want to know more than that. She says it's too painful. So I kept silent, watching as Vanessa built walls around herself, especially with me. Did she sense somehow that I knew something about her past? Was that why she kept me at arm's length? Why she seemed to resent every suggestion I made, every family tradition I mentioned? My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. Jacob's name flashed on the screen, Mom? His voice sounded tired but happy. Just wanted to check that you got home okay. I'm fine, sweetheart. How are Vanessa and the baby? Good. Vanessa's exhausted, of course. The baby... He paused, and I could hear the smile in his voice. We're calling her Lily. Lily Marie Henderson. Marie. My middle name. I felt tears spring to my eyes. That's beautiful, Jacob. It was Vanessa's idea, actually. The Marie part. I gripped the phone tighter, confused by this unexpected gesture from a woman who had just hours earlier banned me from the delivery room. Mom, about earlier. Jacob's voice dropped lower. Vanessa was just stressed and in pain. She didn't mean... It's... Okay, I interrupted, not wanting to hear the excuses we both knew weren't true. Birth is intense. I understand. After we hung up, I sat looking at Clara's letter again. Vanessa naming her child partly after me seemed so at odds with her usual behavior. Was it possible that becoming a mother herself had opened something in her? Or was it just another gesture designed to please Jacob while keeping me at a distance? Carefully returned the letter and photograph to the envelope, then the envelope to its hiding place. The secret felt heavier than ever. That night I dreamed of 3 generations of women: Clara, young and broken; Vanessa, fierce and wounded; and little Lily, brand new and full of possibility. In the dream, I was trying to form a bridge between them, but the pieces wouldn't connect. I woke before dawn, the weight of silence pressing on my chest. For 5 years, I'd honored Vanessa's unspoken wish not to discuss her adoption. I'd kept Clara's story locked away, telling myself it wasn't my place to reveal it. But now, there was Lily. My granddaughter would grow up with the same questions, the same missing pieces in her history. And Vanessa, I'd seen the fear in her eyes during her pregnancy, heard the edge in her voice when she talked about motherhood. I don't have any maternal instincts, she'd told Jacob once, not knowing I could overhear. What if I'm terrible at this? I knew those fears came from somewhere, deep and unacknowledged. They came from abandonment, from wondering why her own mother couldn't or wouldn't keep her. They came from a story Vanessa had never heard, a story that might help her understand herself as she embarked on motherhood. As the first light of morning crept through my windows, I made a decision. I would try once more to connect with Vanessa. I would be patient, gentle, and persistent, and when the time was right, if the time was ever right, I would tell her about Clara. I would tell her the story she needed to hear. 3 weeks after Lily's birth, I was still waiting for an invitation to meet my granddaughter. I'd sent flowers, a handmade blanket, even meals delivered to their doorstep. Jacob called regularly with updates and photos, but each time I asked about visiting, there was always some excuse. Vanessa's still recovering. The baby's schedule is unpredictable. Maybe next week would be better. I was arranging fresh flowers in my kitchen when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a wild moment, I hoped it might be Jacob with the baby. Instead, I opened the door to find my son alone, his face drawn with exhaustion, dark circles shadowing his eyes. Jacob! I pulled him into a hug, feeling how thin he'd become. Is everything okay? He stepped inside, running a hand through his uncombed hair. Mom, I didn't know where else to go. I guided him to the couch and sat beside him, my heart hammering with worry. What's happening? Is it Lily? Vanessa? Both. Neither. He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. I don't know what to do anymore. I waited, giving him space to find his words. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed. Vanessa isn't. She isn't bonding with Lily. She barely holds her. She goes through the motions, feeding, changing, but it's like she's completely detached. When Lily cries, Vanessa just stares at her like she doesn't know what to do. My chest tightened. That can be normal, sweetheart. New mothers sometimes... It's more than that, he interrupted. She's not sleeping. When she does, she has nightmares. Yesterday, I found her sitting on the bathroom floor crying, saying she was a horrible mother, that she was going to ruin Lily's life. I reached for his hand. Has she spoken to her doctor? This sounds like postpartum depression. I suggested that. She refuses to call the doctor. Says she's not crazy. He made air quotes around the word. Says medication is just a crutch. I bit my lip, thinking of Clara and her struggles with mental health. Had there been a genetic component that Vanessa inherited? Or was this reaction rooted in the trauma of her own abandonment? There's more, Jacob continued, his voice dropping. Last night she said something that scared me. She said maybe Lily would be better off without her, that she wasn't meant to be a mother. A chill ran through me. Jacob, those are serious warning signs. She needs help. I know. He stood up abruptly, pacing the small living room. But she won't listen to me. She barely talks to me anymore. And I'm exhausted, Mom. I've been doing everything. The night feedings, the housework, trying to work from home while Vanessa just exists in this fog. I watched my son, the weight of his new responsibilities crushing him. Where is Lily now? With Mrs. Chen, Vanessa's mom. She comes over most afternoons so I can get some work done. She's worried too, but Vanessa won't talk to her either. I took a deep breath. Would Vanessa accept help from me? Jacob stopped pacing and looked at me skeptically. You know how she feels about you. I do. But sometimes it's easier to accept help from someone you don't have to pretend with. I stood up and placed my hands on his shoulders. Let me try. The worst she can do is shut the door in my face. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. She might, but I'm desperate enough to risk it. As Jacob prepared to leave, I asked the question that had been burning in me for weeks. Why Marie? He looked confused. What? Lily's middle name. Vanessa chose my middle name for her. Why would she do that if she dislikes me so much? A shadow crossed his face. She said it was because despite everything, you've always been there. Stable, present. She said that was rare in her experience. I watched him drive away, those words echoing in my mind. Stable, present, rare in her experience. Like pieces of a puzzle slowly coming together, I began to understand what Vanessa might really be struggling with. Later that afternoon, I sat in my garden, Clara's letter in my hands once again. There was a passage I'd read dozens of times. The hardest part of giving up Vanessa wasn't the moment they took her away. It was knowing that someday she might become a mother herself and have no one to guide her through it. No one to tell her that the terror she might feel doesn't make her a bad mother. No one to tell her that she is nothing like me, that my failures don't have to be her destiny. Clara had predicted exactly what was happening to her daughter now, and I was the only one who knew. That night, I called Sharon, careful not to reveal too much about Vanessa's situation. She's struggling with new motherhood, I explained. Jacob's worried, and I want to help, but she's never liked me much. Sharon, who had navigated rocky relationships with 2 daughters-in-law, sighed sympathetically. Sometimes the people who push us away the hardest are the ones who need us most. They just don't know how to ask. But how do I reach someone who won't even let me through the door? You show up anyway, Sharon said simply. Not to take over, not to judge, but just to be there. Sometimes that's all we can do. The next morning, I packed a basket with muffins I'd baked at dawn, a thermos of soup, and a small stuffed elephant I'd been saving for Lily. I added a package of the herbal tea Jacob had mentioned Vanessa liked. Then, before I could lose my courage, I drove to their house. Standing on their porch, I heard Lily crying inside, the high, desperate wail of a baby who had been crying for some time. I knocked, then knocked again louder. No answer, though the crying continued. Worry crawled up my spine as I tried the door handle. It was unlocked. Vanessa? I called, stepping into the entryway. Jacob, It's Amelia. The house was in disarray. Dishes piled in the sink, laundry baskets overflowing, the musty smell of a home whose windows hadn't been opened in days. The crying led me to the nursery, where I found Lily red-faced and frantic in her crib. But it was the sight of Vanessa that stopped me cold. She sat on the floor against the wall, knees pulled to her chest, staring blankly at nothing while her daughter cried. She didn't seem to register my presence at all. "Vanessa," I said gently, kneeling beside her. "I'm going to pick up Lily." "Okay?" No response, not even a blink. I lifted my granddaughter for the first time, cradling her against my shoulder, murmuring softly until her cries subsided to hiccuping whimpers. Only then did I turn my attention back to Vanessa. "Where's Jacob?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "Meeting," she whispered, her first acknowledgement that I was there. "Couldn't cancel again." I nodded, bouncing Lily gently. "When was the last time you slept, Vanessa?" She shrugged, her eyes still vacant. "What does it matter? I'm failing at this, just like I fail at everything that matters." In that moment, looking at her hollow eyes, so much like Clara's had been, I knew that the story I'd been keeping couldn't stay hidden much longer. But first, Vanessa needed immediate help. I shifted Lily to my other shoulder and pulled out my phone to call Jacob. As I waited for him to answer, I made a silent promise to both Vanessa and the baby in my arms. I would not let history repeat itself. Not this time. The next few days fell into an exhausting routine. Jacob took emergency family leave from work. I practically moved into their guest room, caring for Lily while Jacob convinced Vanessa to see her doctor. The diagnosis came swiftly: severe postpartum depression, possibly with psychotic features. She needed medication, therapy, and constant support. Vanessa's parents visited daily, bringing food and offering help, but they seemed almost afraid of their daughter's condition, as if mental health challenges were something shameful, to be hidden away. Mr. Chen patted Vanessa's hand awkwardly and told her to stay positive, while Mrs. Chen busied herself with household chores, rarely entering the darkened bedroom where Vanessa spent most of her time. "They mean well," Jacob explained, after they left one evening. "But they've never been comfortable with emotional stuff. When Vanessa struggled as a teenager, they sent her to therapy, but never really talked about it at home." I nodded, understanding more than he knew. The Chens had adopted Vanessa when she was 3, old enough to carry the trauma of her early years with Clara, even if she had no conscious memory of it. They had given her stability and opportunity, but perhaps not the emotional tools to process her feelings of abandonment. By the end of the first week, Vanessa's medication had begun to help. She emerged from the bedroom more often, sometimes sitting in the living room while I cared for Lily. She didn't speak much, but occasionally I would catch her watching me with her daughter, not with her usual hostility, but with something closer to wistful curiosity. One afternoon, as I was singing softly to Lily while giving her a bottle, Vanessa appeared in the doorway of the nursery. "That song?" she said, her voice hoarse from disuse. "What is it?" I smiled, continuing to rock the drowsy baby. "It's an old lullaby my grandmother used to sing. I sang it to Jacob and he loved it." Vanessa hesitated, then entered the room and sat in the rocking chair opposite me. "No one sang to me when I was little. At least I don't remember it if they did." My heart ached at the simple statement. "Would you like to learn it? For Lily?" A flash of panic crossed her face. "I'm not. I can't do what you do with her. She always cries when I hold her." "She cries because she senses your anxiety," I said gently. "Babies are remarkably perceptive that way." Vanessa looked down at her hands. "I don't know how to not be anxious around her. I look at her and all I can think is that I'm going to damage her somehow." I placed Lily, now asleep, in her crib and turned to face my daughter-in-law fully. "May I ask you something, Vanessa? And please know that I'm not judging you. I genuinely want to understand." She nodded warily. From the moment Jacob introduced us, you've kept me at a distance. Even before Lily, you seem to resent me. I've always wondered why. Vanessa's face flushed. For a moment, I thought she might retreat back to her bedroom. Instead, she took a deep breath. You had this perfect relationship with Jacob. This intact family history. Photos and stories and traditions. She twisted her wedding ring nervously. I've never had that. I don't know how to create it for Lily. My relationship with Jacob is far from perfect, I said quietly. We've had our struggles, especially after his father died. And family isn't about perfection, Vanessa. It's about showing up, even when it's messy. That's easy for you to say. A hint of her old bitterness crept into her voice. You've always had a family. You don't know what it's like to wonder why your own mother didn't want you. The moment had arrived sooner than I'd anticipated. I could deflect, change the subject, maintain the secret I'd kept for years. Or I could begin the delicate process of sharing the truth. What if she did want you? I asked carefully. What if giving you up was the hardest thing she ever did? Vanessa's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I'm just saying that sometimes the story we tell ourselves isn't the whole truth. Sometimes people make impossible choices out of love, not abandonment. She stared at me for a long moment, then stood abruptly. I'm tired. I need to rest before Lily wakes up again. I didn't push. The seed had been planted. That was enough for now. Over the next few days, Vanessa's condition continued to improve. The medication helped stabilize her mood, and she began taking more interest in Lily, watching closely as I demonstrated bathing techniques, diaper changes, and soothing methods. One morning, I was showing her how to swaddle Lily when she asked unexpectedly, "How did you learn all this?" Was your mother like you? Patient? Good with babies? I smiled, remembering my own mother's practical approach to motherhood. She was different, more structured, less intuitive, but she loved fiercely and wasn't afraid to ask for help when she needed it. My mother, Mrs. Chen, is a good person, Vanessa said slowly. She gave me everything, except answers. Whenever I asked about my birth mother, she would just say, "She couldn't care for you properly." Like that explained everything. I continued wrapping Lily, giving Vanessa space to continue. When I got pregnant, I started having these dreams about her, my birth mother. In the dreams, she's always leaving me somewhere. A store, a park, a strange house. I'm calling after her, but she never looks back. Vanessa's voice cracked. The dreams got worse after Lily was born. Sometimes in the dream, I'm the one walking away, and Lily is the one calling after me. Dreams can be our mind's way of processing fears, I said carefully. You're afraid of repeating a pattern you don't even fully understand. Vanessa nodded, tears filling her eyes. What if it's genetic? What if whatever made her leave me is inside me too? I finished the swaddle and handed Lily to Vanessa, who accepted her with nervous hands. The fact that you're asking these questions, that you're fighting so hard to be present for Lily, that already makes you different. Lily squirmed in her swaddle, her tiny face scrunching with displeasure. Vanessa looked panicked. She hates it. She hates when I hold her. She's just adjusting to the swaddle, I assured her. Try rocking her gently, and maybe sing to her. That lullaby I taught you. Vanessa began to rock awkwardly, her voice barely, a whisper as she attempted the lullaby. To both our surprise, Lily's fussing subsided. She blinked up at her mother with those unfocused newborn eyes, and for perhaps the first time, they truly looked at each other. She knows you're her mother, I said softly. That connection is there, Vanessa. It just needs nurturing. A tear slipped down Vanessa's cheek. I want to be good at this. I want to be what she needs. You will be, I promised. Day by day, you're already becoming it. Later that evening, as I prepared dinner while Jacob gave Lily a bath, Vanessa approached me in the kitchen. She leaned against the counter, watching me chop vegetables with an intensity that made me pause. "Earlier," she said finally, "when we were talking about my birth mother, you said something strange about her wanting me, about giving me up being a hard choice." Her eyes met mine, sharp and questioning. "How would you know anything about that?" I set down my knife, wiping my hands on a dish towel to buy myself a moment to think. The time wasn't right yet. She was still too fragile, the connection between us too new. But I couldn't lie to her either. "I've known many women in difficult situations," I said carefully. "Women who had to make impossible choices about their children. I've learned that there are rarely simple answers when it comes to why people do what they do." Vanessa studied me, unconvinced. "You know something, don't you? Something about me, about my birth mother." Before I could respond, Lily's wail echoed from the bathroom, followed by Jacob calling for help. Vanessa hesitated, torn between pressing me for answers and responding to her daughter's cries. "Go," I said gently. "Lily needs you now. The rest can wait." She gave me one last searching look before hurrying to the bathroom. As I resumed preparing dinner, I knew that our conversation wasn't over. It was only a matter of time before I would need to tell Vanessa the full story, a story that might either heal the wounds of her past or deepen them beyond. Repair. The secret was beginning to unravel, thread by delicate thread. I only hoped that when the whole tapestry was finally laid bare, it would form a picture Vanessa could accept, one that might help her understand not only where she came from, but who she could become. 2 weeks passed. Vanessa grew stronger, each day more confident with Lily. The medication helped stabilize her moods, and the moments of bonding between mother and daughter became more frequent. I began spending fewer nights at their house, though I still visited daily. One rainy afternoon, I arrived to find Jacob putting on his coat. "Emergency at work," he explained, kissing my cheek. "Server crash. Vanessa's napping with Lily, but they should be up soon." After he left, I moved quietly through the house, tidying the living room. I was folding a blanket when I heard Vanessa's voice behind me. "How long have you known?" I turned. She stood in the hallway, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. No Lily in sight, still asleep, I assumed. "Known what?" I asked, though my racing heart betrayed I understood exactly what she meant. "About my birth mother." Vanessa stepped closer. "I found something while looking for my insurance card in Jacob's desk. A letter from you to him, dated 3 years ago." My breath caught. The letter where I'd almost told Jacob about Clara, then decided against it, reasoning it wasn't my story to tell. I'd written it during a period of intense guilt about keeping such a secret, then never sent it. Jacob must have found it among my papers when he helped me organize my home office last year. "You wrote that you knew her," Vanessa continued, her voice tight. "That you met her when I was already gone. That she showed you my picture." She uncrossed her arms, revealing her trembling hands. "Why would you keep that from me? All these years?" I gestured to the couch. "Please, sit down, Vanessa. This isn't a simple story." She hesitated, then sat, perched on the edge as if ready to flee. I took the chair opposite her, gathering my thoughts. "I met Clara Thompson 17 years ago at a community center in Oakland. I was volunteering there, running a support group for women in recovery." I paused, watching Vanessa's face carefully. "Clara was trying to get clean after years of addiction. She'd recently been diagnosed with cancer." Vanessa's expression didn't change, but her fingers dug into the couch cushion. "Go on." She joined my group because she was filled with regret, not just about her addiction, but about giving up her daughter years earlier. I leaned forward slightly. "Your name was the first thing she told me about you. She was proud that your adoptive parents had kept it, the name she'd given you to honor her grandmother. Vanessa, she whispered. I nodded. She showed me your picture. You were about 3 in the photo, solemn-faced with those distinctive eyes. Why did she give me up? The question was barely audible. I took a deep breath. Clara struggled with bipolar disorder, diagnosed in her teens. When she became pregnant at 20, she was living on the streets, in the grips of addiction. Your biological father wasn't in the picture. Vanessa closed her eyes briefly. So she abandoned me because she was an addict? No, I said firmly. She kept you for 3 years, Vanessa. She tried desperately to create stability for you. But her mental health deteriorated after your birth. Severe postpartum depression that went untreated, compounded by her bipolar disorder. Vanessa's eyes snapped open. Postpartum depression? Yes. She described feelings very similar to what you've been experiencing. Detachment, fear of harming you, overwhelming anxiety. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. When she realized she couldn't provide the safe home you deserved, she arranged your adoption through a church program. It was a voluntary surrender, not abandonment. Vanessa was silent for a long moment. You've known this since before Jacob and I were married. All those times I talked about feeling disconnected from my past, about not knowing where I came from. You said nothing. I wanted to tell you, I said quietly. But it wasn't my place to disrupt the life you'd built. Your parents, the Chens, they raised you, loved you. I wasn't sure what good would come from revealing a painful truth. That wasn't your decision to make. Anger flashed in her eyes. You had no right to keep this from me. You're right, I acknowledged. I made a choice I thought was protecting you, but I see now it wasn't my choice to make. She stood abruptly. Is she still alive? Clara? I shook my head. She died about 15 years ago. The cancer was aggressive, and her body was already weakened from years of substance abuse. Vanessa pressed a hand to her mouth, turning away from me. I couldn't tell if she was stifling anger or grief. She wrote you a letter before she died. I said gently, I've kept it all these years, waiting for the right moment. And you decided now was that moment? When I'm already struggling with being a mother myself? Her voice cracked. I didn't decide anything. You found Jacob's letter. But yes, I think maybe now is when you need this truth the most. I stood and approached her cautiously. Clara feared you would inherit her mental health struggles. She worried that if you became a mother, you might face the same demons she did. She wanted you to know that giving you up wasn't about not loving you, it was her final act of love. Vanessa turned to face me, tears streaming down her cheeks. How convenient. A pretty story about sacrificial love to excuse abandoning a child. It's not a story, Vanessa. It's your history. A history that might help you understand your own struggles now. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Your fear of becoming a mother, your anxiety about bonding with Lily, they have roots deeper than you knew. So it is genetic, she said bitterly. I'm damaged goods just like her. No, I said firmly. You have genetic predispositions, perhaps, but you also have knowledge and support that Clara never had. You're getting treatment. You have a partner who loves you, and you have people who understand what you're going through. The sound of Lily's cries came through the baby monitor on the coffee table. Vanessa wiped her tears roughly with the back of her hand. I need to go to my daughter. She straightened her shoulders, looking at me with a mixture of anger and confusion. I don't know what to do with this information, Amelia, but right now I can't deal with it and be what Lily needs. I understand, I said, gathering my purse. I'll go. But, Vanessa... I hesitated, then continued quietly. I have Clara's letter and a few photographs. When you're ready, they're yours. She didn't respond, already moving toward the nursery, where Lily's cries were growing more insistent. I let myself out, the weight of the revealed secret both lighter and heavier than when I had carried it alone. For 3 weeks after our confrontation, I didn't hear from Vanessa. Jacob called occasionally, reporting that she was processing, but wouldn't discuss the revelation with him. He was confused, hurt that I had kept such a secret, but trying to understand. "She's different," he told me during one call. "Quieter, but more present with Lily somehow. It's like she's working through something deep inside." I gave them space, missing my granddaughter and son fiercely but respecting the boundaries Vanessa needed. I mailed Clara's letter and photographs to their house with a simple note. "When you're ready. No pressure. Love, Amelia." Spring arrived, painting my garden with the first tentative blooms. I was kneeling among the daffodils one Saturday morning when I heard a car pull into my driveway. I looked up to see Jacob's sedan, and my heart jumped to my throat. Vanessa emerged from the passenger side, Lily bundled against the spring chill in her arms. Jacob hung back, retrieving the diaper bag, giving his wife space to approach me alone. Stood, brushing soil from my gardening pants, unsure what to expect. Vanessa's face was composed, serious, but without the anger I'd last seen. "Hello, Amelia," she said formally. "I hope it's okay that we came unannounced." "Of course," I replied, my eyes drawn to Lily, who had grown so much in the weeks since I'd seen her. "Would you like to come inside? It's still a bit cool out here." She nodded, and we walked to the house in silence, Jacob trailing behind us. Once inside, Vanessa settled on the couch, adjusting Lily in her arms. "I read Clara's letter," she said without preamble. "I've read it many times, actually." I sat across from her, giving her space. "I'm glad you did." "She writes like me," Vanessa said softly. "The way she structures sentences, her vocabulary, it's eerily similar to my own writing." I smiled. Clara was very articulate. She loved poetry. So do I. Vanessa looked down at Lily, who was awake but content, studying her mother's face with alert eyes. The Chens always found it strange how much I loved literature. They're both so practical, so science-minded. Jacob sat beside Vanessa, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. She leaned into his touch almost unconsciously, a small gesture that spoke volumes about their connection. "I've been angry," Vanessa continued, "at Clara, at the Chens for not telling me more, at you for keeping the secret. But mostly I've been angry at myself." "Why at yourself?" I asked gently. "For repeating her pattern, for struggling with motherhood the same way she did." She stroked Lily's cheek with one finger. "But the letter helped me see it differently. Clara didn't have what I have. Treatment, support, stability. She made the hardest choice imaginable, because she loved me more than she loved the idea of being my mother." Tears pricked at my eyes. That's exactly how she described it to me. Vanessa met my gaze steadily. "I understand now why you hesitated to tell me. You were trying to protect both her memory and my feelings. But I'm still working through the fact that you knew such an important part of my story and kept it from me." "I should have found a way to tell you sooner," I acknowledged. "I was wrong to decide what you should or shouldn't know about your own life." She nodded, accepting the apology without dwelling on it. "I've made an appointment with a genetic counselor. I want to understand what aspects of my mental health might have connections to Clara's bipolar disorder. Not because I'm afraid, but because I want to be prepared, for Lily's sake as well as my own. That's a wise decision." "I've also started writing letters to Lily," she continued, "about everything. My childhood, my struggles, the good and bad, parts of becoming her mother. I don't want her to ever wonder where she came from or why certain things might be harder for her." Jacob squeezed her shoulder gently. "Vanessa's been amazing," he said, his voice filled with pride. "The way she's facing all of this head-on." Vanessa gave him a small smile, then turned back to me. "I wouldn't have understood Clara's letter the same way, if I hadn't experienced similar feelings after Lily was born. In a strange way, it was the right time for me to learn the truth, even if it was painful. She hesitated, then stood and approached. Me? Lily cradled against her chest. Would you like to hold your granddaughter? The simple question brought tears to my eyes. Very much. As she placed Lily in my arms, our hands touched briefly. The baby looked up at me with Clara's eyes, the same eyes that now watched me with cautious hope from Vanessa's face. We're not going to be perfect at this right away, Vanessa said quietly. I still have moments when I'm overwhelmed, when I'm not sure I can be what Lily needs, and I'm still processing everything about Clara, about my past. Perfection isn't what families are about, I replied, echoing words I'd said to her weeks earlier. It's about showing up, even when it's messy. That's why we're here, she said, sitting beside me so that Lily was cradled between us. I want Lily to know her grandmother, to have what I didn't have growing up. A sense of where she comes from, a connection to her history. Jacob joined us, completing our small circle. We thought maybe Sunday dinners could become a tradition, he suggested. If that's okay with you, Mom. I'd like that very much, I managed through the lump in my throat. Later, as they prepared to leave, Vanessa hung back while Jacob strapped Lily into her car seat. She turned to me on the porch, her expression serious. I was wrong about you being a bad influence, she said quietly. I think I was afraid of your stability, your certainty as a mother. It highlighted everything I feared. I would lack. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But now I see that you're exactly the influence Lily needs in her life. And maybe the one I needed too. She hesitated, then stepped forward and embraced me briefly. It wasn't a warm, lingering hug. We weren't there yet, but it was a beginning. Thank you. You, she whispered, for keeping Clara's story when no one else did, for giving me back a piece of myself I didn't know was missing. After they drove away, I stood on my porch, watching the empty street. The story I had carried for so long was no longer mine alone to hold. In sharing it, something new had begun. A fragile, budding relationship that might one day grow as strong as the bloodline connecting us all. 3 generations of women, linked by more than DNA, linked by shared struggles, by love that persisted. Despite impossible choices, by the courage to face painful truths and begin again. I thought of Clara, wondering if somehow she knew that her daughter had found her way, not just to motherhood, but to understanding. The story she had entrusted, to me, had finally reached the one person who needed it most. The circle was complete.